Turn it on Cliff Live tonight. The latest news, it's feeling right. Kamala's speech so tight, yet no answers in our sight. Trump is shouting wild and loud, felon tales beneath the cloud. Cats and dogs beware, my friend. Springfield rumors never end. Cliff Live bringing news to you. Tune in now, it's fresh and true. Politics with humor strong. Stay informed and sing along. Headlines coming fast and free. Comedy in what we'll see. Kamala dances round the press. Questions left in quiet stress. Trump's wild claims make us think. Cats and dogs on Pizza Rink. In Ohio, who can tell? News and laughter mix so well. Cliff Live bringing news to you. Tune in now, it's fresh and true. Politics with humor strong. Stay informed and sing along. Trump is shouting wild and loud, felon tales beneath the cloud. Cats and dogs beware, my friend. Springfield rumors never end. Cliff Live bringing news to you. Tune in now, it's fresh and true. Politics with humor strong. Stay informed and sing along.
All right, I think we're good. Wait for people to come in. Come into the chat. Bring on the people. So I got the White House press briefing ready to go. Probably just going to take a minute for them to actually start. Figure we just kind of wait and see. But I'm ready. I'm ready for it to go. Wait for some notifications to go out on my live stream. See if some people want to join me. I've been sick, so hopefully my voice isn't too terrible, but you know, that's part of it. That's how things go. Happy Friday to everyone. sit back and enjoy life. There's something about having too many monitors here. I occasionally will lose my mouse. But here we go. We're good. Yeah, looks like everything's good. Good to go. Just gonna wait on our White House press briefing. All right. Mug on deck. Check it out. Boo. Got some ghost on there. Got some coffee. We're ready to go. Do you guys like my music? Pretty bad. My new opening song here.
Turn it on, Cliff.
There it is.
Tonight, latest news, it's feeling right. Comrade Kamala's speech so tight, yet no answers in our sight. Trump is shouting wild and loud, felon tales beneath the cloud. Cats and dogs beware, my friend. Springfield rumors never end. Cliff,
pretty catchy.
Bringing news to you. Tune in now, it's fresh and true. Politics with humor strong. Stay informed and sing along. Headlines coming fast and free. Comedy in what we'll see. Kamala dances round the press. Questions left in quiet stress. Trump's wild claims make us think. Cats and dogs on Pizza Rink. In Ohio, who can tell? News and laughter mix so well. Cliff Lop bringing news to you. Tune in now, it's fresh and true. Politics with humor strong. Stay informed and sing along. Trump is shouting wild and loud. Felon tales beneath the cloud. Cats and dogs beware, my friend. Springfield rumors never end. Cliff Lop bringing news to you. Tune in now, it's fresh and true. Politics with humor strong. Stay informed and sing along.
This is strange. It's like my notifications aren't going out. Weird. I don't know why. What the hell, YouTube? It shows everything's set up right. Who knows? Who knows? So we're just waiting for Kareen to make her way out here to grace us with her presence. And in
Here's
the
your bill, ma'am.
meantime,
Oh, and it looks like you guys
maybe I'll
already
pull
included
up
the tip. Thanks.
what's going on in the world. What is going on in the world? Let me see. Haven't I got to really look at the news all week? Pull that up. See what's going on today. Let's see what's going on with Pence. Says filing a Trump case details remarkable schism with Pence over rejecting 2020 election loss. In this image from video, security video shows Vice President Mike Pence being evacuated from near the Senate chamber as rioters breach the Capitol. Yeah, okay, there he is. What are they trying to say here? Kind of curious to see the debate. I didn't actually get to watch it yet, so that's definitely on my to-do list. There's this dock workers thing going on. Nothing too crazy going on, really. I don't think I missed much. So there's a tweet here. It says, that's from Elon Musk. He said, just received this text 20 minutes ago. The level of belligerent government incompetence is staggering. It says, what the fuck? FEMA is both incompetent and stopping people from helping. How can I help? They said, it's true. They are now about to shut down the airspace to regulate the private choppers we are riding in to deliver Starlink and supplies. We are pushing back with Trump team as well to help us, but not looking good. We need help to get word out in FEMA about FEMA. And we spoke with Ivanka and handed out Starlinks with her yesterday, but FEMA then showed up and started blocking us, which is insane to think FEMA is blocking people from handing out Starlink. Jesus. The largest concern for us here is the FAA throttling flights for our choppers where they are requiring to-from information and mission now to deliver a discrete code. Doing this takes a long time and very cumbersome to the ops. This is the largest concern and most help we could use. Absolutely insane. U.S. government can't rescue stranded astronauts. That's funny. Why is the U.S. government working against the interest of the American people? Government funding wars overseas. Government when Americans need disaster relief. Absolutely insane of these people. Who the hell knows what's going on? Oh man. Kareen, like always, is gonna be late. That's what she does best. I wonder what's taking her so long. Absolutely insane. Come on, Kareen, let's go. Let's go. FEMA is actually trending on Twitter. Because of what we just said with the Elon Musk tweet where they're stopping people from actually delivering Starlink. Tim Kennedy's. He's got a little video with it too. Yeah, let's see what he has to say.
Entities within state.
Are they still not there anywhere? What are you seeing from FEMA in the federal response, if any?
I mean, they're present. They're in the way. They are directly interrupting our ability to conduct.
What's going on, Chad? Yeah, it was my first week of work. Unfortunately, it was pretty lame. Pretty lame, I gotta say.
Missions and operations. And I'm not going to disparage anybody because we are trying to work within partner relationships, both government and non-government entities within state and federal and county. I went to put a couple of people into a hotel last night, and they have a security guard at the hotel, and they said, "Oh, we're so sorry. The entire hotel has been booked for federal employees." And I was like, no, I have people that would just pull it out of a mountain that are living out in the hills, and there's not a place for me to put them because we have federal employees that are staying in the hotel. I slept in this white car last night. I smell like foot and death right now. as does every single person on our team. Not a single one of us slept. We got done maybe at 3 o'clock. The moment the sun was up and we could fly helicopters again, we were back in the air, and we have not stopped. And I was like on the fence about trying to get on this program or not. I want people to understand how incredible this organization is, Save Our Allies, and all the work that all of these volunteers are doing. But people, this is biblical level devastation. This is apocalyptic, the things that we see out there.
These are towns up in the mountains that are 10, 20, 40 miles away from any other town. And people on the ground like you need helicopters from the government, and they will not release them. I have heard that time and again. And the people who are delivering aid up in the mountains.
Didn't Elon team up with Trump to deliver Starlink? Is that why they're not letting it in? Yeah, so that's what I just saw. Elon did a tweet where he said that they were trying to deliver Starlink with some helicopters, but they stopped people from flying in the airspace, so they're not able to actually deliver all this aid that they want to. There's a tweet. I'll go back and find it. Pretty crazy. Let me see if I can pull it back up. Oh, here it is. Yeah, there's a tweet with Elon Musk here where he said, this was 45 minutes ago. He said, just received this text 20 minutes ago. The level of belligerent government incompetence is staggering. And it just says, it's true. They are now about to shut down the airspace to regulate the private choppers who are riding in to deliver Starlink and supplies. We are pushing back with Trump team as well to help us, but it's not looking good. We need help to get word out about FEMA. We spoke with Ivanka and handed out Starlinks with her yesterday, but FEMA then showed up and started blocking us. Which is like, what the hell are they doing, man? They trying to stop them from delivering Starlink? What is going on here? It says the largest concern for us here is the FAA throttling flights for our choppers where they're requiring to-from information and mission now to deliver concrete code. So I understand like they want to kind of secure the area. Makes sense. But to just shut down an operation like this where they're handing out free Starlink costs the government nothing. Like they could work hand in hand. I don't know why they got to be so insane about this. But, that's how it goes, I guess. Absolutely insane. Yeah, so I guess Tim Kennedy jumped on board, and that's where you got all this information here.
Are now getting requests for body bags. Tim, we got to run.
You are 100% correct. Oh, you're right about that. And there was a no-fly when the president flew in today. We had to land helicopters to not go rescue people so a photo op could take place. And that's a travesty, and that's unconscionable.
If people want to donate, is it saveourallies.com?
That's right. And if somebody is stuck somewhere, or somebody that's stuck, you can go to saveourallies.org, and you can click on there. Let us know. We have people going all over in the places that can't be reached. That's why we have special operations people working with partnerships to get into those areas. So go there, support that organization, and also
absolutely insane. Maybe they're trying to make sure the devastated residents don't spend their $750 on internet hotel reservations. Yeah, I heard a little bit about that. I didn't see the video where Kamala was announcing that they were giving them $750. Ooh, your house just got destroyed, but here's some money that'll barely buy you food. $750 is not even going to get them a hotel. Maybe like one night, if they're lucky, if they want to choose between food or a hotel. Jesus. What is wrong with these people? And then just stop these people from delivering Starlink? Come on. These people are full of it. Apparently, cost of living went up since Hawaii. Absolutely, it's up. It's crazy up. There's another tweet here. Says Nancy Mace has introduced a bill forcing FEMA to redirect all funds from illegals to disaster relief. How is this not common sense? FEMA spent over $1 billion on accommodating illegals in the past few years alone, and now they're saying they don't have enough money for hurricane relief. Oh, jeez. Hawaii only got 700. That sounds about right. That sounds, and yeah, try spending just $700 on Hawaii, man. I could tell you my rent alone was like $3,700. $700, especially in a tourist area like that, that's not going to get you anything. Good luck. So she introduces bill, but you know, if they're not going to vote on it, it doesn't really matter. Entire towns have been wiped out, and the Biden-Harris regime is prioritizing illegals and facilitating an invasion, of course. I'm so sick of the America Last BS. Well, hell yeah, of course. Look at this destruction.
Guys, this is fucking unreal.
That's insane.
Holy shit, unreal.
They got wrecked. Absolutely wrecked, and they only give him $750. What is going on? Looks like we're about to start. Hold up. There we go. They got riggedy wrecked. Maybe she's not coming. I don't see Doocy. Oh, here she comes. All right, here comes Karina. Oh, she's got Biden with her this time. There's a special White House briefing here.
Welcome, Mr. President.
We've been waiting for you.
Welcome to the swimming pool.
Wow.
Hey, look, folks. Good afternoon.
Didn't expect that.
The past 2 days we've gotten some very good news about the American economy. Just yesterday, shipping carriers, after some discussion, an International Longshoremen Union came to an agreement to keep ports in the East Coast and the Gulf ports open. We averted what could have become a major crisis for the country, and a tentative agreement which includes record wage increases for dock workers and shows the importance of collective bargaining and represents, I think, critical progress toward a strong contract. I especially want to thank the carriers, the port operators, and the Longshoremen's Union for reaching this agreement at a time when the nation has experienced such terrible devastation from Hurricane Helene. It was truly a service to the American people for all these parties to come together to respond to our request to keep the ports open. I was determined to avert a crisis at this moment because it's a critical moment. If we didn't do this now, we'd have a real problem. I also want to thank my White House team for the work. They worked around the clock to bring the parties together. But today, we got more incredible news. Although the strength of the American economy it's about the strength of the American economy. New jobs report, as you all know, you've been reporting, created 250,000 jobs in September. The expectation.
People are passing away as we speak. No hope for them. But hey, at least we can get goods from China again. Well, they got their $750. They didn't get nothing, right?
Was for 150,000 jobs in September, which far exceeded that number. Not only the previous 2 months was not only that, the previous 2 months was revised up 75,000 jobs. And from the very beginning, we were told time and again that the policies we were pursuing, we'd put forward weren't going to work, make things worse, including some of the other team are still saying they're going to make things worse. But we've proven them wrong. You know, we've told our American, we were told our American rescue plan was too big and it would crowd out private investment. We proved them wrong, vaccinated a nation and got immediate economic relief to people in need. When I came to office, determined to end trickle-down economics and grow the economy from the middle out and the bottom up. I know you're tired of hearing me say that over and over again, but that was the policy. That remains the policy. Because when you do that, everyone does well. When the middle class grows, the nation's stronger. And the nation's stronger when there's a strong union movement as well. We were told it wouldn't work, but I was also determined to do what was ignored for much too long. Presidents have been authorized since the 30s to be able to spend the money given by Congress to spend the money on hiring American workers and using American product where they were available. And that's what we did. We were told that was going to be a big problem. But all the money I was authorized to spend by the Congress has gone to hiring American workers and using American products. We were told it wasn't going to be. We were told that was going to be a big problem, but it's working. We're also told that our historic laws to invest in America and all Americans would crowd out private sector investment. Well, that was proven wrong too. We've attracted nearly $1 trillion since we've come to office in private sector investment from domestic and foreign companies investing in America, Not this stuff with shipping jobs overseas for cheaper labor and bringing back a product to America. We're building it here and sending it overseas. And look at the results across the board. Unemployment is down to 4.1%. And every month, in fact, that Vice President Harris and I have been in office, we've created jobs.
Wasn't that a big Trump thing to buy American? How's that a big problem? It's like all they do is just steal Trump's ideas. That's all they've been doing.
Single month. The nation has now created 16 million jobs since I've come to office, more jobs created in a single presidential term than any time in American history. Our GDP shows our economy grew at 10% under my administration.
Even down to getting the vaccine out as fast as possible, that was a Trump plan.
Unemployment reached the lowest level in 50 years. We're also told inflation couldn't come down without massive job losses or sending the economy into economic recession. Once again, outside experts were wrong. Inflation has come down. Wages have gone up faster than prices. Interest rates are down. Record 19 million new business applications have been filed for. The stock market continues to reach new heights. We've got more work to do there.
Thanks for the sub.
Getting prices down, like more affordable housing.
Yo, Sweep, lots of things have happened since your last stream. I know, man. I had to do a stupid job. I had to go to work like a lame ass. Israel ground invasion, Iran attack. I heard Iran was firing missiles. I heard that. I didn't really get a chance to watch a lot of the news, but I heard that they were striking Israel.
Extending what I've done for seniors and lowering prescription drug costs by letting Medicare negotiate the prices, make sure that's available to everyone.
Was there any word on how we were going to respond to that? Did Karine come out and blame it on the border bill? That's what I'm assuming what happened. Trump's vaccine went from, I'm not taking it per it being rushed, to Biden, it's safe and effective. Give me 45 boosters. Exactly every time. They killed one in West Bank and hit many air bases in Israel. We did, or retaliation from Israel?
By the way, what we've done so far, just when we brought down the prices for seniors under Medicare, it saved the taxpayers billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. Saved the taxpayers billions of dollars. That's important to note.
Are you from the Iran attack? I gotcha. But did they retaliate?
That these companies are charging. Simple fact is, we've gone from
Iran missiles. So are we going to respond? Was that question asked, or is that going to be asked here in this briefing?
Crisis to literally having the strongest economy in the world. And but we've got more work to do. We've got more work to do to deal with the things I've just mentioned, and we're going to have to deal with unforeseen cost of what this hurricane is going to cost. It's going to cost a lot of money, and I'm going to probably have to ask the Congress before we leave for more money to deal with some of those problems. but that remains to be seen. I'll take a few questions before I turn it over to.
Oh, sweet. He's going to take questions. I'm surprised that he was actually going to do that.
You pick out people.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Josh.
Thanks again for doing this, Mr. President. 2 questions. The first, Florida Senator Marco Rubio described today's jobs report as having fake numbers. What do you make of that?
Oh, he's laughing.
How worried are you that many Americans are hearing that the jobs numbers aren't real?
Look, I'm going to be very careful here. If you notice, anything the MAGA Republicans don't like, they call fake. Anything. The job numbers are what the job numbers are.
Is Marco Rubio really MAGA? I know he's Republican, but MAGA Republican? I don't know about that.
They're real. They're sincere. They're what we are. And by the way, just look at how the EU talks about us, how they like to have an economy like ours. Just talk about the rest of the world looks at us and what we're doing. So I don't want to get going.
And then secondly, could you clarify some of your comments yesterday with regard to strikes on Iranian oil facilities? What did you mean by them, given some of the reactions we're seeing in the market?
Here we go.
Well, look, the Israelis have not concluded what they're going to do in terms of a strike.
Okay, so that's where we're at. They haven't said anything. We don't know what they're going to do to retaliate. Haven't the job numbers been fake for the past 3 years? It depends on who you ask. So yes.
That's under discussion. I think there are, if I were in their shoes, I'd be thinking about other alternatives than striking oil fields.
Thank you, Kareem. Thank you so much, Mr. President, for being here. This week, Senator Chris Murphy said it's certainly a possibility that the Israeli government is not going to sign any diplomatic agreement prior to the election, which is what you have been calling for so long, potentially to try to influence the result. Do you agree? Do you have any worries that Netanyahu may be trying to influence the election and that's why he has not agreed to a diplomatic solution?
No administration has helped Israel more than I have. None. 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 And I think Bibi should remember that. And whether he's trying to influence the election or not, I don't know, but I'm not counting on that.
You've said many times recently that you want to speak to him, that you plan to.
No, I didn't say plan to. I didn't say want to.
You don't want to?
No, I didn't say that. You're making it sound like I'm seeking and then
What?
speaking. I'm assuming when they make the judgment of how they're going to respond, we will then have a discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for being here. What are you advising?
Does Biden know that Israel isn't going to ask for permission anymore? They got their toys. They're going to do whatever they want. They're doing it now. They've been doing it. Exploding pagers. There you go.
The Israelis to do in terms of their retaliation to Iran. And at this point, you still haven't spoken to Netanyahu. Is it fair to say that you have little personal influence over what he decides to do?
No. Look, our teams are in contact 12 hours a day. They're constantly in contact. I've already had my presidential daily brief. We've already had interface between our military, the diplomats. It's in constant contact. They are trying to figure out, and this is high holidays as well. They're not going to make a decision immediately. And so we're going to wait to see when they want to talk.
But over the past few months, they've consistently defied your administration's own advice. So do you believe that the Israelis are going to listen to the advice you're giving them?
That's your question right there.
What I know is the plan that I put together received the support of the UN Security Council, the vast majority of our allies around the world, as a way to bring this to an end. Look, the Israelis have every right to respond to the vicious attacks.
Dude, that's huge. He's saying they have the right to respond. They're going to start fighting Iran. That's a big deal.
Them, not just from the Iranians, but from everyone from Hezbollah to Houthis anyway. And but the fact is that they have to be very much more careful about dealing with civilian casualties.
So how should they respond? You expressed concerns about attacks on Iranian oil facilities. How should they respond?
That's between me and them.
All right, we got to move on. Go ahead, Tam.
The election is
What? They just cut her off? That was a good question. He was asking how they should respond. Do you think Biden came out to show how crazy he is? It's like your racist uncle with dementia at the family barbecue. Yeah, I don't think he's really helping. And, you know, I've thought that he's been checked out for quite a while and just kind of riding it to November. Why didn't they let him answer that question? That was a good question.
A month away. One, I'd like to know how you're feeling about how this election is going. And then also, do you have confidence that it will be a free and fair election and that it will be peaceful?
Two separate questions.
Very much.
I'm confident it'll be free and fair. I don't know whether it'll be peaceful. The things that Trump has said and the things that he said last time out when he didn't like the outcome of the election were very dangerous.
Gotta hope Iran and Russia don't team up. We're almost depleted on resources. Yeah, I mean, that's likely, though. Let's be real.
If you notice, I noticed
Backed by China.
that the vice presidential Republican candidate did not say he'd accept the outcome of the election. They haven't even accepted the outcome of the last election. So I'm concerned about what they're going to do.
Are you making any preparations, getting security briefings related to domestic security?
I always get those briefings.
All right, we got to move on. Go ahead, Keila, and then we have to do a couple more.
She's rushing through all these questions. I don't know why they brought him out. They were just going to rush him through all the questions. It makes no sense. That's a good question. They're talking about like Trump supporters actually going on the offensive. They think that he wasn't given a fair election. That could happen. I could see that. I even talked with my wife about that if Trump doesn't win, there could be some kind of riots going on. There are issues with mail-in ballots being destroyed in the hurricane area. There's going to be an issue there. Yeah, sure, of course. And you know, there could be some kind of conflict coming from that.
Hi, Mr. President. When are you considering imposing sanctions on Iran, and would you include oil in those sanctions?
That's under consideration right now, the whole thing. I'm not going to discuss that out loud.
And just on your comments yesterday on the port strike, you said, by the grace of God, it's going to hold. Is there any reason you think that this
Well, there's more to
temporary
do.
suspension?
A month from now, there's more to do in terms of everything from the whole notion of mechanization of the ports and the like. There's more to resolve.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last night you said that there's still a lot to do to avoid an all-out war in the Middle East. I mean, firstly, aren't we pretty close to that definition already? And secondly, what can you really do to stop that happening?
There's a lot we are doing. The main thing we can do is try to rally the rest of the world and our allies into participating like the French are in Lebanon and other places.
I'm kind of surprised that we didn't respond at all. Like there was no like defense of Israel. We didn't do anything. We just kind of let it happen. And we're leaving it up to Israel to form some kind of plan that we're going to back.
To tamp this down. And but when you have proxies as irrational as Hezbollah and the Houthis, and it's a hard thing to determine.
Got to lose.
I gotta go, Q.
I know.
He's trying to run.
I said I'd take a couple questions.
All right, you're the last.
I think she's increasing her credibility with it.
You have to take some more.
Toulouse, you're going to be the last one.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for spending some time here with us. There have obviously been a number of crises that the country has been facing over the past several days with the hurricane, with the port strike, with the situation in the Middle East. Can you talk about how your vice president, who is running for the presidency, has worked on these crises and what role she has played over the past several days?
Well, I'm in constant contact with her. She's aware we're singing from the same song sheet. She helped pass all the laws that are being employed now. She was a major player in everything we've done, including passage of legislation which we were told we could never pass. And so she's been, and her staff is interlocked with mine in terms of all the things we're doing.
Will the Dems request recounts if it's a close loss, like 5% close? Those recounts, they never work. Never seems to go in anyone's favor. I don't know what they're yelling at.
Totally up to you, sir. All right.
She's campaigning during these crises. Yeah, I haven't seen anything with her.
Go ahead.
I did see she announced the FEMA, the $750 a month, or $750 one-time disbursement. That was it. That's all I saw. But again, I was working, so I didn't really get a chance to look at a lot of it.
Nandita, sir, no, sir. I didn't call on you, sir. I didn't call on you. Nandita, thank you. Nandita, go, Nandita.
Who's this asshole?
Pope Francis calling for a day of prayer and
Doing
fasting.
prayer and fasting this Monday, October 7th. Your reaction, sir?
I will pray and fast.
He's asking about prayers and fasting. Meanwhile, the world's throwing missiles at each other. They didn't even call on him.
That's acceptable to you in terms of Israel's response. How long are you okay with Israel bombing Lebanon? What is acceptable to you?
All right, guys, that's it. Thank you, everybody.
He won't answer that question. That's weird.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. On long-range weapons?
Jeez.
Do you want to reconsider dropping out of the race?
I'm back in.
What made you want to come here today, Mr. President?
All right, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
All hell just broke loose.
Thank you. Can we do that again? Yeah.
No. You heard I was already told that.
So that's why we were late.
I mean, are we always on time?
How can you brag about the 750 disbursement? That's like when KJP came out bragging about saving 16 cents on Thanksgiving dinner. I didn't see the actual video of it, but I saw like a clip of her talking about it, and then I just read the comments, and people were just trashing her like, that's all we can afford. We're sending all this money to these people coming into America. We're sending all this money to Ukraine, all of this, and they get nothing. And knowing Florida, their homes are destroyed, right? In Florida, they're going to battle with the insurance, and they're probably not going to pay out anything. But yet they have these crazy high insurance payments that they're paying every month. He can't answer any important questions, but prayer and fasting, he's all over. Yeah, I don't get it, why that guy even asked him about that. He literally jumped up and was screaming at Biden to answer that question about prayer and fasting. Like, missiles aren't being flown everywhere. Like, really? I'm not even bashing religion. Religion's fine, but what's important right now?
I could call myself out for that. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so this week the United States has faced a number of competing challenges, from tensions in the Middle East to a port strike that threatened our nation's supply chains to a historic hurricane that washed away entire communities. Moments like these underscore the importance of American leadership and resolve, and they show what is possible when we come together. Under the leadership of President Biden and Vice President Harris, we were able to successfully protect our allies, ensure the viability of critical supplies, stand up for good-paying union jobs, and get resources to people impacted by the storm in North Carolina and beyond. In the Middle East, the president showed that our ironclad support for Israelis' security is not just a talking point, it saves lives. Prior to Iran's attack on Israel, the president convened his national security team in the Situation Room to monitor developments in real time, ensure we were prepared to assist in Israelis' defense and protect U.S. personnel in the region. Under the president's leadership, the United States successfully defended Israel from Iran's missiles, standing shoulder to shoulder with the people of Israel. On the home front, the president and his team brought union workers, ocean carriers, and port operators to the table to successfully resolve a strike that threatened U.S. supply chains and the economic progress this president has made to lower prices for the American people. And in the southeast United States, the administration pre-positioned 15,000 federal personnel along with critical resources like food, water, and fuel to ensure that communities in the path of...
Does she ever speak or give an answer that isn't written down? Sometimes she flies off the cuff, but today especially, they are going to be hammering this woman. The questions that are about to fly at her, you can tell like she's nervous, and I don't blame her because she's about to get some hot questions coming in.
Of Hurricane Helene were prepared ahead of the storm. Now we are getting more resources into the hardest hit communities every day, and we have provided over $45 million directly to individuals and families to help them recover. And a wide range of bipartisan officials, including the governors of every affected state, are working together with us and have praised the federal response. These responses underscore why leadership matters. The president's leadership in this moment helps to save lives, protect critical alliances, and ensure that our economy remains strong. But more importantly, it proves that nothing is beyond America's capacity when we do it together.
That's her fault for avoiding the questions for a week. Yeah, we'll see what she has today. Probably blame it on the border bill. We'll see that probably incoming in a little bit.
And really quickly, because I know you all...
Or how can we divert blame for a hurricane on Trump? That's what we have to think about. Here we go.
For this is the week ahead. Next week, the president will travel to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to discuss his administration's work to replace lead pipes in the state and across the country through the bipartisan infrastructure law. This law is investing historic resources into our communities and creating good-paying jobs. The president will also be traveling to Philadelphia for a campaign engagement. He will also travel to Germany and Angola to underscore the enduring strength and importance of two strategic bilateral relationships in addressing a comprehensive range of global challenges. The value of strong alliances and partnerships in the defense of freedom and democracy has never resonated more in Europe, Africa, and beyond. President Biden has made revitalizing our international alliances and partnerships a key priority, recognizing that today's challenges require global perspectives and shared responses. Those are the details I am able to share with for now, but certainly we will have more in the upcoming days. And finally, we have Lael Brainard, our national economic advisor to the president.
That's her nervous tick, that she knows things are about to go down. The hurricane was caused by Trump pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Exactly. I was thinking something about something with immigration, because Trump didn't allow the border bill is why they have to spend the extra money on the immigrants, which means less money goes to people who are hit by the hurricane, right? Because there's only so much money to go around.
She's going to provide more information on how the president helped reopen our ports, as well as the strong job market economy report that we saw today, showing that more than 250,000 jobs this September under the President Biden.
We're just giving her ideas. Where's she going? Oh, there we go. Who's this?
Well, thanks, Karine, and it's good to see everybody today. It is a good day for American workers and families. We saw more than 250,000 new jobs created in the month of September.
Yeah, right.
We saw unemployment back down to 4.1% at a time when inflation is back down to pre-pandemic levels. The East Coast and Gulf ports are opening back up, and dock workers are getting back to work on the basis of a strong tentative agreement on wages and a contract extension between the International Longshoremen's Association and the United States Maritime Alliance. Just a week ago, the negotiation had
Trump tariffs caused China to flood the economy with cheaper products, which caused more ships traveling at once, that caused massive waves.
Totally stalled out. The union and employers had not spoken to each other for months. The last time a wage offer had been put on the table was in the middle of 2023.
And that led to a tsunami impacting Florida.
The president and the vice president directed us to get the parties back to the table to reach a good deal. We worked around the clock to help them find common ground. And the president was clear throughout that process on three things. We needed to get the union and the employers back to the table on the basis of a strong progress on wages, so nothing would get in the way of hurricane recovery. Taft-Hartley was off the table because collective bargaining works, and workers should share in the large profits of the ocean carriers, particularly after those dock workers sacrificed so much to keep goods moving for the American public during the pandemic. And as a result of the hard work that I undertook along with Secretary Buttigieg, Secretary Sue, a number of people in the White House, we are seeing dock workers get a fair share of the industry's record returns. We're seeing ports opening so consumers and businesses can get what they need.
So these people didn't get a raise in a year, so they striked and we gave them a raise. Yeah, pretty much.
And we don't expect to see any effects on our economy or for...
We were greedy. We didn't want to give them a raise, but then they quit working and we realized how important they were, so we gave them a raise.
Consumers, businesses, and farmers, because we have strong supply chains that we built in the wake of the pandemic. The president and the vice president have consistently supported the collective bargaining process. When employers and workers come to the table, they find a good outcome. That's a vastly different approach from previous administrations that might have busted unions and rolled back worker protections. And finally, I would simply say that the data that we're seeing, the data we saw last week, confirms that our economy is delivering for workers.
All right, that'll take a couple of questions. Go ahead, Sally.
How can a government who is always threatening to shut down tell other industries not to shut down? Yeah, it kind of shows you how not important the roles of the government can be at times. They are important, but a lot of it could be done in less of an amount of time. It kind of shows that them shutting down isn't as important. They're not as vital as a function.
Thank you so much for being here. Would you say at this point that the U.S. has achieved a soft landing? And if not, at what point will we be there?
Yeah, I would say that, look, we have seen unemployment, the lowest average unemployment rate of any administration in 50 years, and we have seen inflation come back down to pre-pandemic levels.
How many of those people are without job, they couldn't find a job, and then they dropped off as a number?
That is exactly the kind of growth that you would want to see. Growth has actually been revised up. It's been above 3% over the last year. And we're continuing to see very resilient consumers. So yes, that's exactly the kind of Goldilocks results that you would want to see.
Good, Josh.
Thanks again for doing this. If I can ask about an otherwise strong jobs report, you still had manufacturing employment dip by 7,000. What do you think is happening in the manufacturing sector right now? Is this a response to higher rates, or are you seeing something else going on?
Yeah, so I think if you look more broadly across the administration, you have seen manufacturing jobs growing by more than 700,000. In contrast to the previous administration that actually saw manufacturing job losses even before the pandemic. And I think the right way to think about this, because we have so much new investment dollars from the Investing in America agenda, the right way to think about it is to look at construction and manufacturing jobs together. And there, what we've seen is continued growth. That construction workforce is hard at work with factory construction that is multiples of the previous administrations. That construction of factories is going to turn into the manufacturing jobs of the future. So we see that investment in today's economy, whether it be in chip manufacturing or clean energy, that's going to result in tomorrow's manufacturing jobs.
I don't want to cause drama, but Elon let go of 75% of Twitter employees and it's still going strong. Maybe we should do this with the government. I think we could get by with probably less government. That's just my opinion. But of all things going on in the world right now, is unemployment the hot issue? That for them to be spending, the majority of the time talking about unemployment, you think they would be talking about Iran? You think that would be the more pressing issue to get out to the media to explain details on what's going on, not talking about unemployment?
Thank you, Bernie. Just after the last Fed rate cut, do you think the administration has won its fight against inflation?
So I would say if you look at the data on inflation, it is now back down to pre-pandemic levels. Don't forget, nobody said that could happen with a strong labor market. I think people just really need to go back and see some of the predictions. Nobody thought we could have the strongest recovery in our peer economies, strongest on jobs, strongest on growth, and get inflation down as fast as we did. And so that just shows that the president's investments and the focus on supply chains has really worked.
And just to follow up on the consumer confidence numbers, I mean, there was, upward revision in August, but now it's down in September. I'm just sort of wondering if you can comment on that.
Yeah, so I think the most recent Michigan
lies. Look at the grocery store flyer from 2020 and prices were so much lower. Yeah, the way they word this is not completely honest. They're talking about inflation going back to its average rise. That doesn't mean prices have gone back down. That's not what they're saying, but that's what they're trying to claim. They're trying to make it look like that, to make it look like they did a better job than what they actually did. But all they're doing is saying inflation average rise is back to where it was. But we still had that huge curve going up, and people are still feeling how their income is not being able to be enough for grocery prices. Iran is bad for Kamala. He needs to show the shiny things to keep the masses focused on the election. I think Iran firing missiles is such a huge thing that they can't avoid it. Just not responding to it is going to make them look even worse. They take credit when it goes down, but never take the blame for it going up. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I wouldn't expect them to take credit for inflation going up, but I would expect them to explain the logic a little bit better than trying to say, "Oh yeah, we conquered inflation." No, you didn't. You didn't conquer inflation. That's not really how those numbers work.
Sentiment numbers actually are showing strength. And, if you look at what consumers are talking about, they're talking about good jobs, good job opportunities. And we've seen a lot of people.
In the basic way of thinking about it, you have an item, and 1 year it goes up by $20, but the average rate that it would increase in price was $2, and then that year it increased by $2, and then they throw their hands up in victory and they go, "We did it, guys, we won," and they're not thinking about the $20 increase now that people can't afford that item anymore. It's stupid. Their logic is insane.
People moving into new sectors with better wages, and there is now a lot more confidence that interest rates are coming down, inflation is down, and that's going to enable consumers to feel more confident about investing in some of those bigger ticket items.
Just a couple more. Thank you. On the jobs report, the data also showed that the employment picture in July and August was also brighter than previously thought. For Americans who are concerned about the rate that they may pay on their mortgage or their car that they might buy, what do you see that doing to the path of interest rates going forward?
I think that we are now in a part of the recovery where inflation is back down, and that's really what is going to determine whether interest rates continue to fall. And market interest rates have remained low. Mortgage rates have come all the way down close to 6%. We anticipate, because inflation is back down, that will continue to show through to market.
It's like the gas prices. For 4 years, we heard the president doesn't control gas prices. Very true. But when it goes down, it's the president as a savior. Exactly. They claim that as a victory every time.
Market rates.
And on the hurricane that ravaged the Southeast, what are your early indications of how that could impact economic growth and the jobs picture in November with so many in that region out of work?
Yeah, so we do think normally with a hurricane of this size, with the devastation that it has caused in many communities, that it will affect the employment statistics for that month. But what we know is that generally you see the economy overall bouncing back very quickly, and the growth numbers really becoming sort of strong pretty rapidly because of all that rebuilding activity that we are committed to.
Yeah, Jackie. Oh, that was my on interest rates. Yeah.
How concerned are you right now about the instability in the Middle East and its impact on oil prices?
Yeah, so it is something that we track very closely. Obviously, prices at the pump right now, $3.18 on average. Not that I track it closely, but that is today's number, and below $3 in many states. We believe that global markets are well supplied. And continue to expect that in the U.S. we'll continue to see those low gas prices. And of course, we have really effective ways of addressing some of those geostrategic volatility. We've used it in the past. We have the capacity to use it again. So right now, markets are very well supplied, and we anticipate them to remain so.
All right, last question. Nope, Jared?
Okay.
No, I can go to Garen, too.
A federal judge in Missouri issued an injunction blocking the president's student loan program hours after a judge in Georgia allowed it to advance. What is the White House's message to this dizzying legal battle, and that was lifted up as an economic policy, particularly closing the racial wealth gap? And what is your message to Black and Brown Americans who are really relying on this relief?
Yeah, so student loan debt relief is so important for so many young people who are trying to build wealth, particularly for people who are first generation, to be able to invest in small businesses, to invest in starting a family, to invest in a house for the first time. So we are going to continue to work to deliver that debt relief to so many students who deserve it. I do want to say that we have 5 million Americans who have already received debt relief, and you can go on TikTok and other social media platforms and see their testimonials, what a difference it makes in their lives. And that is why the president, vice president, going to continue working so hard to deliver.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Leo. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, they're going to rush her off.
The numbers are rising according to the USDA. Food insecurity numbers?
Food insecurity numbers
No,
on the rise.
Not right now.
She said
I'm
not right now.
to you, sir.
What? Like that was her child. Not right now.
I'm just not.
We just,
It'd be
no.
nice if you would be less disrespectful in the
She said, bruh, no. You better not.
room.
All right, just asking questions.
Inappropriately. Okay, go ahead.
He said I was just asking a question inappropriately. She feisty today. She really feisty. I didn't get debt relief. I got the you didn't pay enough taxes relief. I didn't get the debt relief either. I paid all of my loans. Government didn't help me with any of my student loans. They said, your punk ass can figure that shit out on your own.
Josh, I don't know if maybe you guys are done with me. Maybe I can walk out. You guys got all the best. You guys got all the best. Go ahead, Josh.
So we were to zoom out.
Yeah.
President Biden came in here today.
Yeah.
He's going to be with Pennsylvania Senator Bob Casey this week. Then he goes to Germany and Angola. He said he's singing from the same song sheet as Vice President Kamala Harris on the campaign. How does he see his public role in the next few weeks as we get closer to the election? What's he trying to achieve, and how's he?
This guy was tuned out 4 months ago. He's not thinking about what he's going to be doing. No, he's done. He is done-ski. He is letting Kamala out there campaign. He's trying the best he can to hold down the fort while she goes out there and hopefully secures it for the Democrats. That's what's going on. That's because you didn't get a bachelor's degree in Aboriginal gender studies of the mid-1500s. No, I went cybersecurity. So they were like, cybersecurity, that's not really important to our economy. So you pay that yourself. And then Paul came in the chat. Where's the music? Boom for Paul. The whole team's here. It took me a minute to figure out how to stop that, but there we go. I'm back from work, Paul. Ready to catch up on the politics.
I think he's doing his job as president. right? I think that's the most important thing. I mean, I started off at the top, at least at this part of the program, where I said that we've had 3 major events happen this week. And what did the president do? What did the vice president do? They worked shoulder and shoulder to deal with these major events. Now we see a deal with the port, a negotiated deal with the ports. Obviously, that collective bargaining is extended until January 15th, which is incredibly important, especially in the midst of a hurricane that we saw, this historic hurricane that we just saw, Hurricane Helene. We see what's happening in the Middle East. The president and the vice president continue to have diplomatic conversations, if you will, to de-escalate, to deal with what we're seeing in the region, and the hurricane. You saw the vice president in Georgia, the president in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia himself, and also in Florida. Pardon me. And so I think what you're going to see is him continuing to do his job, working closely with the vice president. Look, before Hurricane Helene, President Biden was planning to campaign this week. And you heard me say he's going to go to Pennsylvania. He's going to go to Wisconsin next week. And so we have, you all have covered how much of a whirlwind week this has been. And so the president is going to be president. He's going to be commander in chief. And obviously he's going to be supporting his vice president. I can't speak specifically about the campaign because
thanks for the sub.
Respect,
cool shirt, bro.
Here, at least.
This is my Hawaiian shirt from when I actually lived in Hawaii. I'm reliving my glory days in the Hawaii.
For myself as a federal employee and many of us here. And so, look, he's going to continue to do the work that he's doing. We saw strong jobs numbers. That's one of the reasons he came out. He came out because he wanted to talk about that. He wanted to talk about what we have seen this week. And so look, we're going to continue to doing the work, and I think that's what the American people want to see.
Thanks, Green. So, former President Donald Trump threatened to revoke the legal status of Haitian migrants. What is the president's reaction to that? This is something that the former president had tried to do during his own administration.
Oh, I think I did see a clip of that where he said, pretty much y'all are going back. That's what he was saying.
Look, here's the fact. The fact is they're here legally, right? That is the fact. TPS, that's what it gives you. And honestly, I wouldn't take legal advice from the former president. I don't know. That's not something I would do.
Unless he's president.
Okay. How concerned is the administration about the economic impact of Hurricane Helene?
Look, as you can see, we have been working around the clock. The president directed his team very early on to work around the clock to make sure that the states that were affected, the states that he's visited and the vice president has visited over the past couple of days, got everything that they need. And we did that by pre-positioning some of the personnel, about 1,500 federal personnel to do that. What we are doing, we're going to make sure, obviously we're going to always monitor any of the economic impact, but we're going to continue to make sure that we are focused on life-saving and life-sustaining efforts. That's the focus that we're going to have here, and we're going to continue to monitor, but obviously reacting and providing the needs of the states right now, of citizens who are living in those states, is probably the most key and most important. And continue to call on Congress to move forward with additional funding. As you know, in the CR, there was a robust ask for funding, for disaster funding, and that didn't make it in the bipartisan CR. And so we got to get that done, and we're going to continue to have conversations with Congress. Okay.
Here's the facts. If the migrants are here, legal or not, we will let them vote. So it'll be in their best interest to vote for us. If they want to keep getting those SNAP benefits, that cash assistance, they got to vote for us.
I tried asking the
Indeed, I've
president.
called on you like 3 times today. I know some folks in the back are just going to be like, yeah. So. Yep, I hear you. I hear you, Kimberly. I hear you.
What is acceptable to the U.S. in terms of Israel's response, right? How long is the U.S.
She's not going to answer this. Biden wouldn't answer it. She's not going to answer it.
comfortable with Israel bombing Lebanon?
Yeah, no.
Let me guess. Israel has the right to defend itself, And then she's not going to comment on the response.
You guys are going to ask this question every which way, and I totally understand that. We are having conversations, discussions. We're in contact with the Israelis on what.
That's the other one on the bingo card. We're in contact. We are with them. We communicate for 12 hours. Blah 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 blah.
What's next? We have been very clear there will be consequences.
Okay.
You saw the joint statement, the G7. There's going to be consequences. There's going to be sanctions. And I'm not going to preview those sanctions from here. But we have always said Israel has the right to defend itself.
Boom.
And you saw just on Tuesday night, and not just
You got to admit, I nailed that. At least half of it.
Tuesday night in April, how much we are prepared to defend and protect Israel. Because that is our ironclad commitment. I'm not going to get into diplomatic conversations in the public here.
And there was a report.
Doesn't everyone else have the right to defend themselves? Of course not. Of course not. Only if you are on our side can you defend yourself. There hasn't been consequences in 4 years.
That quotes U.S. officials saying the White House wants to take advantage of the massive blow to Hezbollah's leadership and infrastructure to push for a new Lebanese president in the coming days. Can you comment on that?
I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to comment on sources or reporting out there.
I hadn't heard about that one.
That is not something that I'm going to.
It wouldn't surprise me if they tried to overthrow the government there. Good luck, though. He looked pretty armed.
Speak to sourcing that I can't even verify from here. Go ahead.
Thank you. On the port strike.
I don't have booze, Chad, but I got coffee. I'll do the coffee chug.
Reaching a tentative agreement. The White House and several officials were involved in the 90-day extension of those talks. I'm wondering what the significance of that timeline is and whether the election being 5 weeks away played any role in it.
Look, this is about the right thing to do for workers. Many of those workers put their lives at risk during the pandemic. We have always said collective bargaining works. We believe it works. And we have seen parties reach a fair agreement when they come to the table and in good faith and do that collective bargaining. This is what's important. It was important to this president to get this done. This is not about an election. This is about what is the right thing to do for the American people. This is the right thing to do for workers, again, who deserve higher wages, who deserve benefits. And so the president is proud to have been able to do that. His team, obviously with his team, he directed his team to do this. And so now collective bargaining is going to continue, and we'll see where we are in the next couple of months. But this is not about politics for this president. And you have seen that in the last 3.5 years when we've been in these types of situations where.
Too early, but a shot of coffee and a bong rip will do. Hell yes. Do you think KJP is on the Diddy list? The Diddy list? No, man. Come on. She's not a bad person. I don't think she's a bad person. She's not going to Diddy parties. Come on, not her, not Karine.
There was negotiation, and we have been very, very clear: collective bargaining and supporting workers.
On congressional funding, you mentioned some of the items that were lacking in the short-term funding bill that Republicans had put forth. I'm wondering if the president has spoken with any members of the Big Four in Congress to bring those concerns to them directly.
So I don't have any conversations to speak to that the president has had with members of Congress. I mean, you saw him on the road. You saw him in a bipartisan way on the road in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. And you saw him with Republican congressional members and governors and Republican and Democratic congressional members and also governors, and you saw that bipartisanship. I'm certainly not going to get into any private conversations that they have had, but we will continue to speak to congressional leadership and members about getting that extra funding. It is important. They need to act. They need to act. Go ahead.
Did you hear Rosie O'Donnell was turned away at the door of a Diddy party? Are you trolling me right now? Is that what's going on? I mean, why would Rosie O'Donnell be at a Diddy party anyway? Come on. Or is she just looking for attention? She come out with a video to say that?
Karine. Can you talk about how President Biden will be marking Monday's 1-year anniversary of the October summit attack on Israel?
So obviously it's going to be a painful day for many, including for all of us here. And so we will have more to share on how we will be commemorating that devastating day that we saw a year ago. Don't have anything to share at this time.
And secondly, this was President Biden's first time, correct, to the press briefing room since he's... Why
and you're
not,
welcome. You're welcome.
I could see Rosie O'Donnell snitching on them. And so he probably wouldn't want her there, allegedly, if he was really doing all this crazy stuff, which with the huge evidence that's against him right now, I'm assuming Diddy's probably a bad guy. Can we all agree that Diddy's probably guilty? Just saying. Dolly is doing hurricane relief. She's awesome. Dolly Parton? Is that who's doing it?
I know where this question is going to go. It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
I would prefer a question, but that's all right. But real quick, why didn't he come in the 3.5 years before? Why?
I mean, he came today, and you got to see him, and you were here.
He had the opportunity.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right.
Come on. He was here. He took your questions.
Oh, yeah, you're right, Chad. I see Dolly Parton is a major retailer teaming up for Helena relief. I think she does a lot of that stuff, though. I think she's generally just like, she's super rich, super popular, and she's kind of like an actual philanthropist.
He is every Friday.
Not like the Bill Gates kind of philanthropist. She's the actual, like, trying to help people.
Friday with the POTUS. Friday with the POTUS. No, you guys got to bring the ice cream. You guys got to bring the ice cream. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more. Go ahead. I haven't called on you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to go back to Haitians and the TPS, but first, it's another week of misery in Haiti. There was this report from the World Food Program describing acute hunger. What more can the U.S. do to improve the situation in Haiti? And if there's no improvement, is it conceivable that the TPS for Haitians will never be lifted?
So look, on your...
Yeah, Paul brought it up. Dolly is a good person through and through. Yeah, it seems like it. I don't know a whole lot about her or her music career or anything like that, but every time I see her pop up in the news, it's just her trying to do good stuff. So good for her. That's what I would want to do if I was super rich. Just help people, bring people smiles, all that good stuff.
Your last question, I'll do that first. The last part of your question, I'll do that first. I can't predetermine what TPS status is going to be. It's not something that I can do from here. Obviously, as you know, that is a decision with DHS and the State Department. They decide the TPS and the best way to move forward. So I'm not going to get into hypothetical about that. But as it relates to Haiti more broadly and to the question of instability and what's happening, look, despite the instability that continues, the recent deployment, as you know, of MSS mission is a unique opportunity to build a foundation of security and bring hope to Haitians that deserve to live their lives free of violence. And so to that end, the United States has delivered well over $300 million to support the MSS mission while urging the international community to support that mission as well. The United States will continue to hold those undermining Haiti's institutions and committing serious human rights abuses accountable. That is our commitment. We are committed to doing our part both to address immediate security needs and invest in Haiti's long-term successes. We stand with the people of Haiti and will continue supporting their aspirations of more security, certainly democratic and prosperous future. That is our commitment, and we'll continue to support the mission. Go ahead, Michael.
Why does Ducey take Fridays off? I'm assuming he's the senior journalist over there at Fox News, and he can kind of make better hours for himself because he has that seniority.
That's great. It seems as if the president's spoken with pretty much every governor in the affected...
He has. That was affected in the region.
But
was that chick sleeping just now?
Has he spoken with Governor DeSantis of Florida?
Touche. Good point.
Oh, no, she's not.
So... Touche. And I think we read out that he spoke to the governor of Tennessee on our way back from our trip to Florida and Georgia yesterday. I don't have a conversation to read out with the governor of Florida, but what I can say is that we have been in touch. Our team has been in touch with local officials on the ground. We are committed to providing what is needed in the state, obviously to those who were affected in the state, and our commitment is clear. The president has always said it doesn't matter if you're in a red state or a blue state. He's a president for all Americans, and that continues to be certainly his commitment. Go ahead. I know I'm getting pulled, but go ahead.
Thank you, Corinne. The president seemed to suggest that he is asking, or he seems to be suggesting that Israel should consider other alternatives rather than attacking Iranian oil facilities. But should Israel make such an attack, how is the administration preparing for an Iranian retaliation on the Strait of Hormuz that would disrupt oil supply and disrupt oil prices globally?
Oh my God, this is about to get crazy.
Also, as the president said, we continue to have these discussions. I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. About Israel's response to Tuesday night attacks. What I will say is that we understand that they are still determining what exactly they will do. That is something that we understand. I'm just not going to prejudge. I'm not going to get ahead of anything, and the discussions to continue.
So can we say that the administration is preparing for that possibility?
I'm just not going to I'm not going to speculate. They're still, I'm telling you, they're still haven't decided what their next steps are going to be. So that's what I'm saying to you. That's what we understand.
And they're probably not going to tell you.
I don't have anything else beyond that.
Angola, on the president's trip, Corinne, Amnesty International is criticizing the administration's, quote, silence on human rights violations in Angola ahead of the president's visit, calling out the administration's focus on private sector investment to counter China. This is obviously in reference to the Libido corridor. Can you give a response?
Look, I mean, we get this type of question about human rights violations anytime he travels, and if that's going to come up. The president, as you know, has never shied away from direct conversation about human rights and democracy in any conversation. And I could expect that he will do the same in this upcoming trip. And so I don't have anything beyond that. But the president has never shied away from that, never shied away. Okay.
Thank you, Corinne. Does the administration have any concerns about how the aftermath of this storm could impact the vote? Whether it's talking to the Postal Service about mail-in ballots that may not be getting to people, or impacting the...
This is what you were talking about, Chad, where they're saying that the votes were getting wrecked over there because of the hurricane. Danke says, hey, I was here a few days ago. What's going on, Danke?
Infrastructure in these critical states.
So look, we are using every available resources to help this community respond. That's what we're going to do and recover from this disaster. That is our commitment. That's what you've heard from this president. That's what you heard from the FEMA administrator and so many others in the president's administration. And certainly that means ensuring that Americans' voices are heard this November. And so that is our commitment. We want to make sure that people's voices are heard. And so any specifics on where the infrastructure is and what that looks like, certainly I would have to refer you to the state election officials on those, and cybersecurity and infrastructure and all of those pieces on what that looks like for them. But
states voice concerns to the administration?
I cannot speak to that. I have not heard of that. But look, our commitment, again, is to make sure that the resources available so that community can respond to recovery and also get back on their feet and deal with this disaster. We want to make sure that Americans' voices are heard this November. That is important, and so, but certainly that is something that state elected officials can speak to more directly. But we're going to try and make sure they get back on.
Okay. Is this about the hurricane? Didn't Biden's visit there to lead to closing the airspace and search and rescue area? So this White House press briefing, they can kind of ask any questions they want. So of course they're going to ask about the hurricane. A lot of those questions are going to be surrounded what's going on with FEMA and everything like that. As far as Biden going up there and him deciding on closing the airspace, I don't think that was directed by Biden. I think it was more of a decision made around with FEMA and the FAA as they were as they do normal operations, that's typically what they do, is they close down the airspace. But there was a little back and forth between Elon and his team trying to get Starlink out. I think maybe it could have been communicated better. They could have kind of brought his team on board more so they could pass around the Starlink and help people out. I mean, he's doing it free of charge, so they might as well just let him jump on board with them, work hand in hand, and actually like let them get these communications out. Biden waited. Trump went out there for a photo op. I haven't got to see any of it, Paul, because I was working, so I didn't see Trump's photo op, and I didn't really see Biden going out there. So Biden hasn't even gone out there yet, I guess, is from what Paul's saying, dankly. I don't think this is a Biden decision. I'm just saying that. I think this was more an issue between Elon's team going out there, whoever he was working with. I kind of forgot already, but I read a tweet dealing with it where he was posting that out. And it was an issue between them and FEMA and the rescue teams working things out. So like you could say it was a federal government issue, maybe. Yeah, I wasn't saying it was Biden's decision, but I think it might badly affect Kamala's chance in the election because of how it was badly handled by the White House. Yeah, so far it's not going good. No, he did, but not right away. Yeah, okay. I'll have to look into that more. But yeah, there's definitely some issues going on with Elon wanting to give them out Starlink and basically them not being authorized to operate in the airspace. And typically they would do that because, you know, there's a search and rescue team going out. They don't want more people out there getting, you know, caught up in that, and they got to go out and rescue those people as well. So in a way it makes sense, but in this situation where communications are so vital, they probably should have not just shut them down. They probably should have negotiated, worked a better system. That's just my opinion.
I know I haven't called any yet.
Thank you. Former President Trump is accusing the Biden administration of using FEMA funding to support undocumented migrants. How is the White House responding to that?
Oof. And I saw this brought up a lot too, where they're like, you're giving all this money to undocumented immigrants, or the legal, I guess they're calling it, immigrants now, and the people in Florida are only getting $750. So, WTF, government?
I mean, it's just categorically false. It is not true. It is a false statement.
Well, explain it.
And look, the fact of the matter is, I think Washington Post fact checker did a piece, and the headline recently, just moments ago, not too long ago,
I'll see if I can find it.
The headline was, "No, Biden did not take FEMA relief money to use on migrants, but Trump did." I'll leave it there.
Blame it on Trump.
Yep.
Secretary Mayorkas had said earlier this week that
So the article she just talked about, I quickly pulled it up. But of course, you have to pay for Washington Post, and I don't have that. So maybe I can't pull it up. Yeah, they won't let me look at it. These bastards. There's one by NBC News that should be... Here we go. I gotta allow ads. My bad. Hold on. Let me turn my ad blocker off. Okay, here we go. So what are they saying? Okay, false claims about FEMA disaster funds and migrants pushed by Trump. So I guess this started from Trump. There is no evidence that disaster relief funds were used on immigrants in the U.S. illegally. Okay. FEMA disaster money comes from a dedicated fund that cannot be used for other purposes. Okay. Trump repeated one of the more extreme baseless allegations during a rally Thursday in Michigan, saying that the money had been stolen. They stole the FEMA money just like they stole it from a bank so they could give it to their illegal immigrants that they want to have vote for them this season. Interesting. Trump and his allies appear to be conflating two different funds. FEMA has dedicated disaster relief money that cannot be used for other purposes. Separately, it was tasked by Congress in 2022 to disseminate money from Customs and Borders Protections to help communities that received influxes of migrants. The false claims have gained significant traction among Trump supporters and conservative media since Wednesday, when Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro said the agency would need more money for the rest of the hurricane season and Helene recovery, and called for a stable source of reliable funds. Okay. On its specifically dedicated fact-check page, FEMA responded to the claims that disaster relief was diverted to support international efforts of border-related issues. No money is being diverted from disaster response needs. FEMA's disaster response efforts and individual assistance is funded through the Disaster Relief Fund, which is a dedicated fund for disaster efforts. Disaster Relief Fund money has not been diverted to other non-disaster relief efforts. So they're trying to say that it's different pots of money, apparently, is how they're going to go with this one. What do y'all think about that? Do you think that Kamala will be a good president if she wins the election? We'll figure that out when we get there, I guess. Do you believe Donald Trump is a threat to democracy? Not really. Trump just makes shit up. Truth doesn't matter to that POS. Interesting. It's pretty common for a government agency to have different pots of money, and then one part of a program needs more than the other, and they can't transfer the monies back and forth. I know it sounds stupid, but it happens all the time in the government. So I guess I get where they're coming from. They can't just divert funds. It doesn't work like that. It's not like a business where you can just say, my business has this much money and I can give it to anywhere I need it to be. The government doesn't work like that. I can tell you.
That he was concerned that FEMA didn't have enough funding until the end for the rest of the hurricane season. Now that President Biden has seen the damage firsthand in the Carolinas, Florida, Georgia, heard him say at the podium he may have to call Congress back from recess. What exactly is he waiting for to be able to make that call?
Look, here's the thing. We put forth a pretty substantial, robust, I mentioned this moments ago, to be part of the CR. We were disappointed that it was not part of the CR. And if congressional Republicans were serious, if they were really truly serious about doing something for the communities that was impacted by Hurricane Helene, they would join us in calling for additional funding. This is what we've been doing. And so if they're serious, they would get to work and get that done, just like with the border. If they were serious about the border, they wouldn't vote against their own bipartisan proposal.
All right, border bill, time to drink.
That they worked with us on. They're against it. Now, they weren't. They would move it forward. It would actually start fixing the broken system that we're seeing right now. And, you know, they can, if they really want to help us in dealing what we're seeing, whether it's at the border or getting more funding for disaster monies that's going to be needed to get into the communities, they should be serious. Congressional Republicans need to get serious here, and they're just not.
Just a quick question on the port strike suspension. Is the White House going to continue to be in touch with ILA and sort of support those negotiations as they continue?
I think, look, there's congressional collective bargaining continues. I think that's really important. That's what we're seeing, and that's what we want to continue to see. And so we will be in touch as necessary. But I think what's important is they came up with an agreement. That's because of this president's leadership, and the way to get this done is continuing that collective bargaining, and we believe that certainly works. Thanks, everybody. All right, have a great week.
Gotta run. There she goes. So I didn't get to watch the debates. I want to watch those, but I want to show you guys. I do have my prototype. I didn't show it yet. Prototype. Things are starting to come together. I'm getting there slowly but surely. My first business, you know, so it takes me some time, takes me some learning experience. Is my chat not updating? I see Paul has wrote some stuff. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Wore my camo hat to the store a couple times. No reaction so far. Are you hoping to get like Trumpers to come up to you and threaten you? How dare you vote for her? How dare you commie. Is it correct the border bill that Trump shot down was Omnium's bill that contained like 90 billion in foreign aid? Yeah, so we looked it up. I don't remember the numbers offhand, man, to be honest. But when we did look it up, it wasn't just the border bill. So it's a little disingenuous when she says, "Oh, Trump shut down the border bill, blah 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 blah," all this kind of stuff. Not really that true. It had other things in it. It did include things for the border. She's not wrong there. But it wasn't just about the border. If they wanted to actually have a border bill, just have things for the border in it. It had a bunch of stuff like money for Ukraine and all this other stuff. But yeah, we looked it up on here. A video like probably several weeks ago. Are you making your own coffee? That's my plan. I'm trying to make a little coffee business on the side. Trying to find time to put work into it while working again. I just started a job and streaming and doing videos and then working on another YouTube channel and doing a coffee business. So, and I have a family. So trying to fit everything together, man. Trying to pull it together. Either way. Oh, for the comlist, the hat. I think just judging off of my YouTube comments, the first thing people go to is they call her a DEI hire, which I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a big fan. Yeah, I don't like that. I just found your channel today. Damn, I missed it. They really need to explain everything in the bill. They're passed or rejected. I'm for single line item bills. Yeah, me too. That would be a lot better. I don't know why they don't do that. I think that abolishing the CIA would do more to stop drug smuggling across the border than any wall or ICE agent could do. It was absolutely an improvement over the status quo. Did you guys watch the debate? Because I didn't get a chance to. It was Tuesday, and I fell asleep at like 8 o'clock. Of course, they had it after work. So I'm going to watch this. I want to watch it. Hopefully they don't flag my stream. But first I'm going to go to the restroom. Be right back. All right. All right. Snarly, this is the... Oh, man, I keep missing everything. Snarly... Where'd it go? I'm losing the chat. Oh, well. What's your stance on border security, illegal immigration? I think people should come here legally. I'm all for legal immigration. I actually didn't follow any politics this week. It's been relaxing, honestly. I didn't get the chance to either, man. But we're back at it. I'm going to watch this debate. The bill included high-tech shit and or resources to implement them. Are you still talking about the border bill? All right, so I'm going to try and watch this debate. Paul, did you watch the debate then, if you didn't watch any politics this week? I'm going to try and watch it. Hopefully I don't get flagged. Or that was Chad that actually said that. Chad didn't watch any politics this week. Did anybody watch the debate? Paul did watch the debate. Chad did not watch the debate, I'm assuming. Just remember, Kamala came from a middle class family. Is Waltz gonna steal that from her? Is that the theme here? Snarly says he did watch it. All right, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna get my opinion on it. A lot of folks restreamed it. Yeah, as they should. So hopefully I don't get flagged. We'll see. All right, so here is going to be Vance and Waltz dueling it out. I haven't got to watch this yet, so I hear it's gonna be a good one. Let me pull up where they're actually at.
Let's into action.
No, we don't care about that.
Secretaries of over 1,400 Israelis.
Where's it at?
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, thanks more over. It has.
October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
I forgot about it and thought I'd wait to watch it with you. Hell yeah, man. I figure like any big debates like this, we'll just like watch it on Friday or the weekend. That'd be the way to go forward.
But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is...
So I saw videos on X where they painted it to where Walls seemed like he did really bad. He seemed nervous and scared. Starting out, he's okay. He's talking like he's fine. We haven't heard from Vance yet. Paul says we need popcorn. Yeah, I feel like this is going to get good.
That steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw stage a few weeks ago, a nearly 80-year-old...
They're jacking up his mic, that's for sure. Did Waltz do a couple of lines of fat... or a couple of fat lines before his debate? His eyes are wide open like a crackhead. I think he's just a little bit nervous, but he's doing okay so far.
Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
That was a good opening by Waltz there. I'll give that to him. In my opinion, Vance won rhetorically. Of course, who you think won in any other sense depends on who you agree with more, which is true. Absolutely. I try to be objective and, not hold my beliefs too much. And even I said when it came to the presidential debate, I thought Kamala won that. And a lot of people gave me hate, just a bunch of hate. Even though I typically, when it comes to me voting, lean towards Trump. I thought she did a better job in the debate. So curious to see how this goes. Walz did okay there. It was a good opening. He just went from October 7th to crowd size in 2 sentences. Amazing. I mean, it was kind of brought together a little bit. You know, he's just kind of giving like an overview of the things going on. Vance was smoother, but Walz was more honest. Okay. All right, we'll see. Let me see what Vance's opening is. Why is he giving us this like side-eye cheeky smile? What the hell is going on here?
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran?
Was that the question? If that was the question and that wasn't an opener, then that was actually bad by Walz, because I thought he was just doing an opening statement, not answering that question. Oh, hell. Hell, I hit the wrong button. Oh, hell, I can't control Z. Where'd we go?
I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit, because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are.
Okay.
I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for a period.
Was he trolling there? I think there was a little bit more to that. I think he was specifically saying, I was raised in a working class family.
Of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me, and she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine
Yeah, man, he was trolling for sure.
Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Okay, both pretty good openings. You know, Vance is definitely coming off a little bit better to me. I don't know if it's the policies that I know I probably agree with more, but yeah, I think saying he's smoother was probably more correct. I see Kamala's middle class family and raise it with my welfare family. Exactly. Who can play the victim card even more?
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand.
So I was actually deployed when that happened. I do remember him tweeting because I specifically remember being on this airbase and thinking, holy shit, this guy is going to get us into a lot of trouble. I remember specifically being in uniform and I'm deployed and I'm like, oh, fuck, bad things are going to happen. And when those missiles did fall in Iraq, I wasn't in Iraq. I was in a different location that was close to there. I wasn't really in danger. people, high-level leaders brought back fragments of the base that had been exploded, and they showed it to us, hyping us up, doing that kind of leadership thing. This is the dangers that we're facing, all of this, going on. Give us a pep talk. People were definitely wounded. A lot of craziness going on there. But I do remember him tweeting, so he's not wrong. The tweets, I remember looking at those tweets and going, oh shit, he's about to get us all bombed. So far, a debate between these two is all about Donald Trump. Yeah, so far that's it. It was more like a normal debate, which is what we want. We want an actual battle of wits. I don't want them just yelling over each other.
That Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you.
Okay.
Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane, because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today, actually, a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then, of course, afterwards, to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that
Vance appealed to emotion a lot, smart move, which is different because normally we see Kamala appealing to emotion. So if he does, maybe he's trying to take a page from them. Paris Climate Accord, if said we drink. I'm running out of coffee, but I got a little bit to keep it going. So many of my liberal folk think Walsh should have hit Vance harder and be less chummy. I think that's just his character, though. He seems like a friendly guy. You know, that's my opinion. When I watched the X clips, my opinion of him was really like he almost seems childlike, and Kamala is his mom, and he kind of has to appeal to her that way because she is like running for president and he's the vice president. But it's a little bit weird. Like you don't see that dynamic between Vance and Trump, but you see Walz kind of being like a little kid. That's just how it comes off to me. Wright wouldn't be surprised if that was his plan throughout the debate, to try and reel in moderates. Possibly, yeah, to try and appeal for him, maybe seem less robotic. Because I think a lot of the criticism like towards Vance is that he's, you know, like Republican, robotic, white guy, you know, that kind of thing.
You'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy.
Why is he trying to get in agreement with him? I think I see what you're saying now, where he's a little bit too chummy. This is a debate. You guys are not agreeing. You're trying to win.
With this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together. So all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Some thought he talked about his home state too much. Yeah, and when it comes to Kamala, I think that's the angle that he's trying to play, because when you think of Kamala, where she's probably lacking is white male voters. So the play was to get this white male guy on her side, and he can kind of play into, oh, I love football, I'm the coach, and, you know, all this typical like white guy stuff, like I'm a farmer, you know, that kind of stuff. Those people typically vote Republican. I'm just saying. So that's what he's trying to do. I get it. It's all a game that they're playing. Cliff, do you e-bike? No, I do not e-bike. From a strategic perspective, I think Vance was brilliant to take very compassionate stances, because every time Walz agrees with him, the Trump-Vance ticket seems way more reasonable to moderates. Yeah, that's where I was kind of like, why is he trying to be chummy? Walz. Why is Walz trying to be chummy with him? He should be a little bit more aggressive. He He already comes off from a position of kind of being weak, where kind of like where I was saying he was childlike. He comes off a little bit insecure, maybe that's it. I don't know, a little bit timid, that. So I think him agreeing is a bad angle. Is stopping pollution even possible the way China, Japan, and India spouted out with no regulations? Absolutely not. And China is just growing with pollution. So us taking a stance on it probably isn't going to do much. I don't know if the bigger picture is they think that if we start doing these things that other people are going to jump on board. China's not jumping on board with us. Sorry, guys. That's not going to happen.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we
look how intensely he was staring at Vance. Maybe this is where things start going downhill.
We talk about clean energy. I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil?
He's about to say they all gotta go. Walz, when staring at Vance, looks like one of those old Muppets. Statler and Waldorf. Oh yeah. He kind of a little bit, yeah. It's the bushy eyebrows that kind of puts him in that position.
You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens,
the largest mass deportation plan in American history, and to use the U.S. military.
Their own feed cut out and repeated it.
To do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil?
I thought for a minute they were trying to censor him.
You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families, used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other?
Yeah, see, look at his posture. He's starting to look a little sheepish now. She asked if he wanted to respond, and he's kind of like, nah, not really.
Things regarding children.
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio. But there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by...
I've never understood how the far left can be fine with illegal immigration while also claiming to care about the working class who are directly displaced by influx of cheap labor. Well, I mean, when you put your tinfoil hat on and you talk to the right, they say it's because they want more immigrants to come in because they are illegally voting. Tinfoil hat. If that's true, I don't know.
A conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this. Just what America wants.
How can he absolutely deny the use of drug mules of any sort? Most of fentanyl comes through parts of entry muled by Americans. I think he just didn't want to respond to it. I see that a lot in these debates. They'll just go, oh, that's false, and that's it, and they'll move on to something else. I think he just didn't want to respond to it at all.
Wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to...
He's kind of denying that we have an immigration problem, and that's not true at all.
To do this, Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this, and he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the
They're talking about immigration.
deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have
Yeah, he didn't really answer the question at all.
1 minute.
When it comes to walls, though, he was basically denying that there's a problem. Now, we can say the cats and dog thing is silly. Sure, I can agree with you on that. But the reality is Springfield is asking for more funding. They are saying that their hospitals can't support all these people. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the supply chain and their grocery stores to support all these people. So just by that alone of them asking for more funding, you can say there is an issue. He can't deny that. Sometimes that conspiracy right is kind of correct. It's some ways, not always in the ways of correct. Border bill drink. All right.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules. And it is a
He's still not answering the question.
Disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president
Senator,
again.
your time is up. Governor, what about...
So he still didn't answer the question, which in reality they do want to send these people back. Just say it. Own up to it. Trump just said he wanted to send all the Haitians back.
Our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations.
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Well, their talking point is to tighten the border, which actually would fix the crisis. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been. And it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help. But most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico. You've got to go back through proper proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor.
That was actually witty. He turned the chumminess around on him and said he agreed with him while bashing the candidate that was actually running, Kamala. That was actually pretty smart. It was pretty witty. Was he like a lawyer or something? I know he was a Marine. I don't know what he did after that. I guess he said he like built some businesses or something. But do you think it would be reasonable to say that immigration should largely be based on the supply of labor? I mean, labor actually having positions for them to work would be important, but also can these towns support them? We should just be dropping a bunch of people in small towns and saying, well, you guys figure it out. And then you have the governor on TV saying we can't support all these people. And it becomes a political issue, right? We should actually be seeing what's going on in these towns. Can they support them?
Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans.
See, look, he's trying to appeal to Republican voters. They're tricky, like the way they're doing it back and forth. We need bouncers and doormen at the borders. Exactly.
They simply want order to it. This bill
Border
does
bill.
it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
We're
because
going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys
economy,
weren't going to
we're-
fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration.
Why are they trying to cut him off? This is actually good information.
Margaret, by
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get.
They need to describe the legal process because you keep saying that they're legal immigrants, and it's not technically, I mean, technically they are legal, but it's not through normal legal processes.
Senator.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much-
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we
CBP
want to have.
One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris
They cut his mic.
created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to
They cut his mic on that.
get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret.
That right there was interference. Any way you look at that, that was interference in this debate. That was what he was saying was actually important. It wasn't like it was Trump rambling on, fighting back and forth, all that yada yada, and they had to bring order. That was actually important what he was saying. Project 2025 is a double drink. This hurts their narrative. Yeah, I totally agree. This makes them look bad. Now it looks one-sided to me. Why are you fact checking me is now a meme. I haven't seen that yet.
The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan.
These guys think money is just monopoly money and it's all pretend and we can just print more and it won't affect anybody as long as it means they'll get more votes.
With down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35.
He just pulled the middle class card. Yeah, he waited because Vance pulled it first, so he couldn't pull it. But he still said it. He had the whole speech prepared. I come from a middle class family.
Insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing,
he said, damn it, that's my line.
Goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle.
Didn't Trump do the same thing too during the debate? He said, excuse me, I'm talking, or something like that. You know, Kamala's signature phrase, I'm talking. And Trump was like, no, I'm talking.
Class, $6,000 child tax credit. We have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American southern border and make middle class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris
look at him, he's getting worried.
Has such great plans for how to address middle class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom. Because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Oh, he looked tired. Yeah, I guess if I have to.
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one, whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years? And the last year as president. That's what's wrong with the system.
We don't know if that's true or not. He won't release his taxes. You can't say that as fact.
There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
Where's the fact check on that? Yeah, I totally agree.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I have 3 beautiful little kids at home. Too, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator,
I thought Trump did end up releasing his tax returns from 2015 to 2020. I didn't see it if he did. As far as I know, he didn't release them. I can look it up, though. Did he just claim Trump didn't pay taxes as president? He did just claim that. And that's what I was saying. Like, we haven't seen his tax returns, so how can he even say that? I'm sure Walz has not seen his tax returns. I'll look it up, though.
Your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
that's a
show
gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver.
So actually, Snarly, I found this here. It says Trump's federal tax returns are released. Here's what we know, and it doesn't really tell a whole lot. It just talks about his different income sources through like book deals and real estate and all this stuff. It doesn't specifically say if he paid taxes or not, but come on, man, he paid taxes. Let's be real. That's about it. So you are 100% correct that his tax returns were released.
Deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on health care then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain?
I'm pulling up the 2017 1040 that you sent. It's just taking a long time to load.
That discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17.
Oh yeah, so you can even see here. This was actually a good find. You can see here his taxable income. Where is it at? Tax interest right here. $6 million. So yeah, you can definitely say that was a lie.
Worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And
he shouldn't be calling himself a knucklehead. It just doesn't look good on his end. I don't know. He's trying to be relatable or something. I don't know, but he keeps bashing himself and agreeing with his opponent.
In Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just
howdy.
To follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke.
He said, no, I cannot explain.
on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
That was awkward, and that was a terrible look for this dude.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate Donald Trump unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear?
Trump reported millions in negative income in 2015, 16, 17, 2020, and he paid only $750 in federal income taxes in 2016, 17. I just pulled up his 2017 1040, and it showed he paid $6 million. So I'm going to say that's not correct.
And not just the advice he wants to hear. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out to messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
That's part of the course. Kamala called Biden a racist, and then he picked her as a VP. Yeah, I don't think anybody's holding a lot of weight with this question either. It's politics. That's just kind of how things go. The deductions he got are an issue with the way the tax code is written, not the fault of Trump. Absolutely. I'm not going to hold him accountable because he's able to write things off and has many businesses. I'm going to do the same thing in every way that I can legally to save money. That's what I'm going to do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. He's not breaking any laws. That was from an NBC article. I can't post a link. Yeah, but we pulled up his actual tax return. And I'm only looking at one. That's just 2017. And just there, it shows that that's inaccurate.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights.
Oh, here we go.
Walls, after Roe versus...
This is something that Walls should be able to win on, right? At least with all of the female voters. This should be like his peak to come back into this, right? I have a little question. Why only the demo and the rep? They're in power since so long, even... Oh, you're just saying like political parties. That's just how America works. We have two sides, and that's all that's ever going to be here.
Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create?
I agree, that would be nice. Unfortunately, I think voters are too listed. Did we conclude that the lady in GA died from hospital neglect? I don't think we did. I don't think we can actually say if it was or wasn't, without actually talking to the family and getting really the solid facts that aren't political facts everywhere. I don't know if we can say whose side we're actually on for that one. Trump's IVF ban has been debunked. Yeah, he was actually saying he wanted to make it he wanted to like give a fund for that or something. I don't know. I'll look it up. I forgot at this point.
A federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies.
Basically, he wanted to socialize it. It says it here. And you know, it's NBC. So Trump says he wants to make IVF treatments paid for by the government or insurance company if elected. So he didn't say he wanted to ban it. He actually wanted to make it more available. But that's how these things go.
And decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, I one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions. Let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that, too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point. That's not it at all.
What was I wrong
This
about,
was-
Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong?
He's actually going to hold him accountable. There we go. That's what I was hoping. I was hoping the moderators would step in and say something, but of course they're not going to.
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this,
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals. They get early childhood
That's not the question.
education. They get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget, Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in
Notice how they
just a
didn't
moment.
fact check it. You see that? They're not going to do anything about it. Nothing. All right, where are we at?
Children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think
Vance either doesn't understand the Minnesota law or is being disingenuous. I haven't read the bill, so I can't make a call on it if he was right or wrong. I'd like to think that this was a rehearsed line, so he looked it up. But again, I don't know.
I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by...
He said he has a kid who got attacked playing volleyball? Like a gun attack?
...by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents And they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead. And they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that worked. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable...
Do you think his kid gets teased about his dad putting tampons in the boys' bathroom law? Does he get teased about that? Maybe? I don't know. I don't know too many young kids to know what kids are like nowadays, to be honest. I would think probably if it was my generation, yeah, he probably would get teased a little bit for that.
Things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator?
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old...
Those were unisex bathrooms, but probably... What high school has unisex bathrooms?
Witness a shooting. And I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA.
What? He said I became friends with school shooters. What? I don't think he meant to say that. I think that was a mistake. You can keep your guns as long as it's the ones we like, you know, the cute ones, not the scary ones. Yeah, not the pew-pew ones. They had them to solve the stupid bathroom issues, like one person at a time restrooms. Okay, I don't have kids, so I don't know if they have unisex bathrooms in high school now. That's not for me, you know, to answer.
Hey, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities.
Is Vance going to call him out for saying he was friends with school shooters?
It's at the number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns, and there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices.
I think he meant school shooting victims. Me too. Yeah, there's no way he would say that. I mean, he did say that, but that's not what he meant.
Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a
$25,000
down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. First, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those listening tonight, that's a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it the
You said it's not a handout. How is it not a handout?
Federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan,
the GI Bill is not a handout. You earn the GI Bill.
The big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that
the VA home loan is not a handout. Again, you have to earn that. If you don't join the military, you don't get any of those things.
Make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in...
But here's the thing. Even if you are using your VA home loan, if you don't have the income to afford the house, you don't get the house. They're not going to loan to you. There's things in place that stops you from taking out too much debt to your debt to income. And you can't screw yourself. So he's still not answering the questions. They're asking specifically about this handout for first-time home buyers. And it is a handout because there's no qualifications besides, I'm a person who wants to buy a house. That's a handout. They're saying that's going to raise the cost of homes. So how's that going to help people? Wait, we have to pay back our mortgage? When did that happen? Exactly. Like, what is he talking about? He's going in circles here about a bunch of nonsense. That's crazy.
Stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run.
What? People who have income can support themselves? No way. Really?
End up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes.
That would have been the perfect spot for him to say, "I'm speaking." He missed his opportunity there.
Is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens if you lower energy prices? As Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill. One of the biggest drivers of housing costs, aside from illegal immigration, is, think about it. If a truck driver's paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods, too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But, Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Vance outclassed him. Yeah, I'm giving it to Vance so far. Have you seen President Reagan say the 9 scariest words are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help"? I didn't specifically see it from Reagan, but I heard it from Dave Ramsey and a bunch of his videos, and I totally agree with it.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you
A Dem asking for leftovers. Who would have thought?
respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in
Well, of course, that's not
migrants,
true. And again,
that
you
it's
have the
affecting
facts. I
housing
guess we
prices.
agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more?
Trump did say that, and that was a big fail during the debate.
I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think it's
So this is a debate where both agree with each other. How is that a debate? I mean, it's better than them yelling at each other, talking over the moderators, all the craziness that we saw in the past. I'd rather it be more formal like this. So it is better. It is weird how they try to agree with each other and then they just kind of like throw a little dig in at the end.
An important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do. But I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to. Go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher. And he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens is... So you think
the individual mandate's a good idea?
You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard
Walz is he's writing down a book. Is what he's doing. Looked like he was taking notes at first, but then he started making a manuscript.
People say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret?
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time.
ahead,
we have a
Nora.
number of subjects to discuss.
Cut
Margaret?
him off.
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you've said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you.
It looks like he's reading text messages. Don't most companies give you child care leave? Are there any companies out there that do not give you any kind of leave for that?
How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, you I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota, and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some places, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look,
What happened to the days to make sure you have an emergency fund, not a government fund? Well, I mean, specifically here, they were talking about when you have a kid, you should have time away to bond with your kid. And I agree with that. I don't think that's so terrible, to be honest. But I thought most jobs did that in their benefits package. I thought pretty much every job does that, right? I can't think of one that doesn't. But they want to make it a federal law. That's where the question really lies. Should it be a federal law, even though most jobs are already doing it?
Speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare because, look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families.
Most white collar jobs do, most don't, in my experience. But if you also have to have personal and vacation time available to cover pay, they just don't give you money because you have a baby. Interesting. I thought they did. I thought most companies, even like McDonald's, would like give you time off. Huh. It could, yeah, that could be true. Yeah. Again, I spent most of my time in the military, which gives you hella days off that they pay for if you have a kid now. I forget exactly what it was. I think it was like it's something stupid like 60 or 90 days that you get to bond with your kid. Insane. Like even the job that I have now is they give you 4 weeks, I believe. 4 weeks paid, which, that's reasonable. Okay. I thought most companies did that, but maybe I'm wrong. JD nailed it here. You need to have a program grants open up to family and community members, not just big program facilitators.
We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator.
They'll give you the time off, but they don't give you the missed pay. Okay, all right. That makes sense. Even then, I thought they paid, but maybe not. I thought that was like a basic kind of compensation thing, where they would pay you for your time off and they would give you, some amount of time. But Vance's wife clerked for Justice Roberts and Kavanaugh. I don't know those people.
Thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that
Supreme Court Justice. Yeah, now that you mentioned Kavanaugh, I think I remember him from that big scandal where they were trying to say he essayed someone or something.
We're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the childcare shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this.
Tim Walz was drawing pictures of dinosaurs. His face just looks worried. I see, he's scribbling down a bunch of stuff, but he looks worried.
Very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz.
Maybe that's just his face.
Your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is.
So we'll be making so much bank from tariffs that we can afford to provide government child care. That sounds like he's claiming that, yeah. My take on this whole situation, Trump has plans to increase revenue for the country, but no disbursement plans. Yeah, which is pretty much what Tim is saying. or not Tim. I'm watching Tim here. You can tell I'm getting tired. What Paul is saying. Yeah, that's pretty much what Paul just said. Harris has disbursement plans, but no revenue plans. Yeah, actually, totally agree with that, actually. They should work together. And Tim is the only guy here who's actually trying to agree with everybody and work together. So, yeah.
Especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's a good question.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies.
Come on, man. That's not what she asked.
Make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president, Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
These commercials are brutal. Yeah, man, YouTube has to get their money.
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
I don't feel like that's going to happen, though. I feel like there's going to be riots, and we should be prepared for that. That's a lot more cops than reported 2 years ago. Yeah, that number changes every time they talk about it.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time.
She did say that. I remember her saying that.
And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance, I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear masks.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this, I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office even if the president doesn't. And I think Kamala Harris would agree she wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
All right. Let me jump forward. Right here.
Thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics.
So when do you think January 6th will not be an issue? When they can no longer use it for their political advantage. That's when it will no longer be an issue.
Politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
January 6th is a historic event. I do agree with that. It is a historic event. The question is, will the history books call it an insurrection? That's the goal. And I think, honestly, they will eventually be calling that an insurrection for sure.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that, too, has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle.
That's it.
I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora.
All right. That's it. Can we say Vance probably won that? Even if you disagree with his politics, you can probably say Vance won that, right? All right. I think I'm going to let the dog out. Cook some steak on my Traeger. And enjoy my first day off from working at the grind. Vance won it, but looked weak on January 6th. Yeah, I got a little shady around the end. The abortion part kind of started out weak. He got a little bit better when he started quoting that bill. I don't know if the bill part was true or not. We never looked it up. But, yeah, I still give it to Vance. It was refreshing. No yelling or screaming from either side. Definitely agree with that. It was very different from a Trump debate, I'll tell you that. I thought both of them were very professional, so a good debate. It was a nice watch, though. Nice watch. I think I'm getting a cold from working with people, being in the office with all those germs that my voice is all messed up. Man. Ironically, Vance's weakest position is the economy. Vance won. Weak points were abortion and January 6th. Yeah, I think we agree with that. Walz looked horrid on Tiananmen Square. In general, he looked timid. I think that's just his personality. I don't think he's like the strong leader, I don't think that's his image. Can we have these two do the President Tal debate? What's the President Tal debate? I don't know. I give it to Vance, though, for sure. Yeah, it was Vance. It's all Vance. Presidential debate? Our enemies and our allies would probably respect us more. And we wouldn't be getting questions as Americans like, hey, what's it like over there? What's going on? Y'all okay? Like an abusive relationship. What's going on at home? Do you want to tell me anything? All right, I'm going to go cook some steak. I'll be back tomorrow. Y'all have